We are not motivating our child with love. We are motivating them with fear or with guilt or with worry. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast today. We are diving into a training that I did a little bit ago. I haven't decided if I'm going to include all of the days in the podcast, but we are for sure going to include day one. It's called the Irresistible Parenting Protocol, and I talk about 3 mistakes that you do not want to make if you're interested in parenting from a place of connection. These are 3 mistakes that I most definitely made in the beginning, and I don't want you to miss them. They might go under the radar. It dawned on me that I wanted to share this with you all when I was driving home with my daughter from play practice. She's in Beauty and the Beast, and she's having a blast. We moved to this cabin. We have this beautiful drive that we get to make every time we go to the city and back. And I was thinking about it as she was driving home, and this training popped into my head. And I thought, yes, that is what we're sharing today. That is the message that I want to send to you all. The 3 mistakes that I'm telling you to avoid making are priceless. They're so good. Without further ado, let's dive into the workshop. Enjoy. Welcome, everybody. My name's Andy Martineau. I help parents get their kids to want to listen to them by using connection, not correction. It's life-changing. Yes, I'm seeing comments in the Q&A with those of you who are agreeing with me. You're cheering me on. I love it. Thank you, guys. I have kids ages 23 to 14. I have 3 girls and 3 boys, so an even split. And what I want to offer you all is that 16 years ago, I felt totally over my head and overwhelmed. I want to say we can be in a place where we feel overwhelmed, where we feel like things aren't working, and be able to find a different way. For me, what this did is it motivated me to look for a different way to parent. And it led me to create Connect Method Parenting, which combines developmental psychology, neuroscience, somatic healing, mind management, a couple other things together to create a sustainable way to think about parenting and to do parenting. So the natural way someone flows through for a lot of you is you start by reading my book, and it's called Connect Method Parenting. If you haven't seen it, it's on Amazon. And that book really helps you start to see the lay of the land with Connect Method Parenting. I lay out the framework. I give you as much as I humanly possibly can deliver in a book. And then a lot of times what happens is once people hear about Connect Method Parenting from the book, and from what I've shared on social media and everywhere I possibly can share it, they come into League. And that's where we are today. You guys are visiting a training that I'm doing for League. Those who are not members of League, those who are in League, this is one of our trainings, going step by step from where we are to where we want to be with our parenting, using connection as the primary parenting tool. And inside that group, this is a reminder for everyone, we guarantee that if you follow the strategy, the formula, the methodology that takes you step by step, that we guarantee results. And I just love knowing that I can guarantee Connect Method Parenting because it works so well that I know it works and that I can say, hey, this works. And if not, then we will figure out, we'll either give you your money back or we'll keep working with you. It's going to work for you. And I'm so proud of that. So what I'm going to teach you over the next 5 days, like I said, was originally prepared exclusively for League. And halfway through, like I said, I just decided, hey, I want to share this with people who are not in League, all of those of you who are visiting, who aren't members of League, who are getting a sneak peek into some of the things that we do inside League, which are our live classes, our coaching calls, our trainings. There's so much more we do. We have a podcast feed, but you guys are getting a taste of this. And I'm so excited for you to be able to go deep with us on Connect Method Parenting over the next 5 days. This series is called 3 Mistakes You Cannot Afford to Make with Your Parenting, and 5 simple fixes that will take you from feeling crusty and cursing, that frustrated feeling, to calm and connected. So this is a high-level training. It's higher than I've ever done in a free training, but I think it's going to be a very important training. And I know it's going to give everyone who's on this call with us over the next 5 days or the next 5 calls with us a lot of value. Now, I'm going to be giving you some really important beliefs and tools over the next 5 days. Whether you're visiting, you can take what you're able to absorb and run with it or jump into League.
Or if you're in lead, we're going to take this and we're going to start the momentum and get us in this really powerful place. So over the next 5 days, we have the potential to transform your parenting if you take the time to implement what I talk about and let it become a new lens for you to look through with your parenting. So before I go any further, I just want to lay out how the week's going to go so everyone's super clear. Today, we're going to be talking about the 3 mistakes you don't want to make. And we're going to also be going into, that's going to lead us right into the Irresistible Parenting Protocol. Tomorrow, we're going to dive into parenting sovereignty. It's awesome. I can't wait to dive into that. The third day, your dream relationship strategy. So powerful. Day 4, the off-track recovery recipe. And day 5, your guaranteed results blueprint so that you don't fail. Now, I want to start off by saying that parenting starts inside of our brain. So anybody be told that before? I see some of you amazing moms that I've been working with for a while, and you're saying, yes, I've heard that before. But if you aren't a member of League or you don't know much about Connect Method parenting, you might be a little bit confused by that. Parenting starts inside my brain. What does that mean? So I'm going to start with this truth to lay the foundation for everything we're going to talk about today. So parenting truth number 1. Parenting, along really with everything else in your life, but we're going to stick with parenting, is that parenting starts inside your brain with a thought. If you don't have consciousness to think a thought, you can't really create anything with your parenting. So I just want to lay this out. Every single thing that's ever been created by humans has been created with a thought in someone's brain first. So think about it. The iPhone, the computer, internet, light bulbs, cars, indoor plumbing, no exceptions. If you don't allow yourself to think, you can't create anything. And I know we're thinking all of the time, but I'm saying consciously think. If we don't think on purpose, we aren't going to create anything purposeful with our parenting. So the first step to become a very intentional, a very connected parent is to become aware of or to become present to what we're thinking and to manage it. And the next step is to start creating our thoughts on purpose. So we often don't think of creation as something that happens inside our brain. It does, but that's true. It's where all creation starts. So we better start with our parenting inside our brain first. And we are all here to create something new, something better. So maybe we want a smoother routine, a calmer day. We want more connection with our kids. We want better bedtimes. We're all here to create something. So I want you to file that away for now. But I want you all to be thinking about this idea that parenting starts with a thought inside of your brain. And just let that mull over, marinate a little bit, because it's so powerful. And I want you just to keep considering it and what questions you might have or how that might affect you. Okay, before we dive into the main topic of today, we need to start with 5 fixes and the 3 mistakes. So the 3 mistakes that you can't afford to make with your parenting. And it's really important we start here, because we're going to get a lot out of knowing what we don't want or what isn't working. So we're going to get what you don't want to be doing out of the way and have clarity around it. And then we're going to jump into what we do want to create. We have to see both. So often we're avoiding what we don't want. We don't want to look at those thoughts or those emotions when we're thinking things that we're not proud of about our kids or feeling things we're not proud of about our kids. But it's really important that we see those things so that we can consciously understand them and pivot out of them. All right, here's the first mistake you can't afford to make with your parenting. And it's thinking that the kids should have, could have done something different. You're wishing they would have done something different, or they ought to have done something different. I call this the shoulda, woulda, coulda complex. And these thoughts, which are, by the way, very common, they're going to be continually being offered to our brains all of the time. So they're always there. So no shame. Don't beat yourself up. No judgment that you have them. But I want you to start to question them and see what they're creating for you. So these beliefs come from a low thought process about yourself and your child or their ability. And it leaves your child and or you, sometimes we have both, feeling either guilty or defensive or maybe embarrassed. Now, how does it feel? I want you to think about this. How does it feel inside of your body when you're thinking your child should have done something differently? You can just go there with innocence and compassion for yourself when you've had that experience. Maybe it was this morning, maybe it was last night when you're like, gosh, everybody should be going to bed better. Everyone should have picked up their stuff. The kids shouldn't be fighting like this. So what does that cause inside of us? Yeah, I'm seeing some things, and you're welcome to type it right in the Q&A. Love the interaction. Frustrated, disappointed, icky. Yes. When you're feeling this way, these icky emotions, you're not going to show up in a way that really motivates your kids to do anything differently. So using a sentence like, you should have done the dishes like you said you would have, or I wish you would have listened to me, or you could have been nicer to your sister. They're sentences that in our brains feel true. But if we pause for a second and we look at them like a watcher hovering above, third party, we're the reader of the book, not in the book. We can pull ourselves back for a minute. We can see that they're not serving us. They're not getting us closer to our highest parenting intentions. They're not going to get us those results of dreamy relationships and kids that listen great. They do the opposite. They trigger the child's nervous system. And the two most common responses, not limited to these, but the two most common responses that happen to our kids when we do this unintentionally, usually it's just rote. It's what we've seen in the society. Maybe it was what was done to us because our parents were trying their best. So no shame, no beating anybody up. But when we go into this mode of, you should have done it, even if we don't say it, if we're thinking it, gosh, they should not have done that. They could have done better. Feels like it's just the truth. And your brain might be thinking, Andy, what are you talking about? That is helpful. But let's dissect a little bit. What's also helpful is as we have this conversation, I want you to think about if that has ever been done to you. If someone's come up to you and been, you should have not done that. You could have done better. And they're doing it from a place of maybe frustration or judgment, not from this loving place. Typically, when we say that, we're coming from a judgment and resistance. So if someone's done that too, I want you to think about that too, because sometimes that really helps us see this in a different light that we can't see when we're trying to be the parent in this situation, because sometimes we're so caught up in that this is helping them. This is what they need. This is going to get them out of the place. I have this responsibility to teach them. And you do, but let's come at it from a different way. That's what we're going to start pulling apart. Yeah, I see some more disappointed, frustrated, angry. Yeah, those are the emotions that come up. And what it does is it triggers, because we're sending off emotional waves. People call it vibrations or energy, whatever you want to call it. It's an emotion that is transmitted. You can tell by the look, by the feeling, by the body language, what's happening. And we're sending that too as we have this conversation of shoulda, woulda, coulda, even if it's in our head. So the two things that commonly happen is a fawn response. So with fight or flight, we usually just do fight, flight, but there's fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. Those are the kind of the Fs that have been now used commonly for those nervous system reactions. And with parenting, a lot of times this looks like our child really trying to please us or do what we've asked to ensure the relationship is good. But this is not going to turn into a healthy intrinsic motivation inside of them. When we use a sentence like, you should have known better, or you could have done better, and we're coming from this place of not having compassion for them doing the best they could in that moment and motivating them to do better, we're really just frustrated about the situation. We are not motivating our child with love. We are motivating them with fear or with guilt or with worry. And if the behavior does change, it's coming from a place of them not feeling safe and concerned that if they don't fix their relationship with you, they will be hurt or negatively impacted. Genetically speaking, humans are pack animals. We need other humans for safety. We need other humans for survival. This has been passed down to us for generations. And especially children, they know intuitively that they need an adult who cares for them, who believes in them, who loves them, help them survive. So even though their needs are being met, and we know that you're not going to abandon them, in their little brains, they're going into this survival mode. Their nervous system is saying, this isn't safe. We need to do something about this. So that's one of the reactions. The other one is fight. They could push back because of that sentence. You should have known better. You could have done better. It causes them again to feel unsafe. But this time, for some reason, their nervous system needs to prove that you're wrong and they're okay to keep them feeling safe and functioning. It's powerful to understand what's not effective when we go into this mode and clearly see why it doesn't work so that we can convince our brains that it's worth trying something differently. So I'm going to tell you a quick story to illustrate this point. A few months ago, I was pulled over by a police officer. I actually wrote this in one of the emails that I sent out inviting people to this training. So if you're ready, it's a little review. but is such a good example of the power of setting a connective limit, of being able to set a boundary from what we do with connect method parenting. We still have to set boundaries. We can't just let them like go wild and have no limits, but we need to do it from a place of love and compassion. So anyway, I was pulled over. I just picked up my sister-in-law. We hadn't done anything wrong. I literally just pulled out of her apartment complex, turned left. There was no way I could have sped. I didn't change lanes without a blinker. I did everything. So I was like, what is happening? And I went into serious fight or flight mode. So I'm trying to be cool because my sister-in-law's in the car, but I really hate getting pulled over by police officers. I don't like speeding. I don't try to do anything that would ever get me in that position. But here we are in this position. The officer comes to the window and he tells me that the little registration stickers on my license plate aren't there. So we've moved recently to another state and we had re-registered our cars. And I was like, what? I even looked to see if there was sticky residue because sometimes they get stolen. People take them off license plates. There's no sticky residue. So I pulled out my proof of registration and he was like, laughed and he was super kind. And he was just like, just go find them. And if you can't find them, you can totally order them new ones. No big deal. And I was able to relax and just enjoy the rest of the day. We were going to brunch and I got home and we ended up finding the license plate that had the stickers was in the back of the trunk, it was in the trunk. The wrong one had been put on the car. But it got me thinking about parenting because this police officer, which is a very stark example, I think, of a corrective figure, someone who oftentimes in our brains, we're like, they're coming and they're like, you shouldn't have been speeding. You should have gotten your stickers on your license plate. They're finding people who aren't following rules and telling them to follow the rules. And that is what the officer did. He did set a limit. He told me I wasn't following a rule, get those registration stickers on your license plate, but he was an example of how to do it from a very compassionate, loving way. No shaming, no frustration, no, you should have done better. How could you do this? This is so crazy that you're driving around with a license plate without stickers. He didn't do any of that, none of that. So he's such a fabulous example of the opposite, of setting a connective limit, which I'm addicted to, setting a connective limit because it changes the game. And when we drop the language of should have, could have, wish you would have, you ought to know better language, then you're able to set a playful, compassionate, confident, energy-filled limit. And boom, right? I was motivated to find my stickers. My nervous system didn't get triggered. I didn't go into fight or flight. I stayed really calm. My logical brain stayed on. And we can do the same thing with our kids. We motivate them by believing they are doing their best. We set firm limits, believing they need our help because they're obviously struggling right now, stepping outside of the limits. They need our help to come back into and play the game by the rules. And we bring in the fun, even laughter, believing that we are capable of handling this and that they are capable of listening. And when your brain fights you on believing this, remember that when you use the should have done better, you could have done better, you ought to have done better rhetoric, your child's nervous system is triggered. Their logical brain goes offline and you send the message that something is wrong with them. So first on the list of the 3 mistakes we can't afford to make with our parenting is we need to stop should-ing our kids because it feels terrible to your child. It brings up a negative emotion like frustration or hopelessness, and it's never going to get you the positive result. The nagging and the shoulda, woulda, coulda, it's not going to lead. And I'm going to talk about what to do instead. Some great questions have come in. This is great, but if they've been asked 20 times, 10 times, I get that. We're going to talk about that. And there's a couple of layers that we're going to go into over the next 5 days to unpack this. So hang on, be patient. We're going to get there, I promise. Because our brains really say, how would I do that? Because this is just going to create more of the same. But what I want to say is think about, is it working? If you're asking over and over again, something's not working. I think it was Einstein that said, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is insanity. I did this. I totally did the shoulda, woulda, coulda stuff over and over and over again, thinking this time it's going to work. And it never did. So there are ways to set firm, compassionate limits, connective limits in a way that doesn't involve this negative emotion of shame or frustration or feeling really like the kids are doing this on purpose. We're going to talk about that. So hold on. I love all those questions. They're so good. And we're going to talk about how removing this is going to set up a totally different tone in our home. Okay. Second mistake we can't afford. And I might go a little bit over. I know I said 30 minutes, probably going to go over because I'm used to teaching for a little bit longer. And I try to bring this down, but it's probably going to go a little bit over. So feel free to jump off after 30. If you want to stay on and catch the whole thing live, please do. Second mistake I want everyone to be thinking about that we can't afford to make with our parenting. And really quickly, before I go to the second one, whether you are new to me, this is the first time you've heard me teach, or you are a longtime league member, I want you to think about the places where this is creeping in, because this is such a, what's the word? Just a subtle, sneaky little thing that comes in where we really believe it's helpful. And we're going to dive into that at the end a little bit more, but just be thinking about it, because for all of us, no matter where we are on our journey, there is room for us to continue to notice where these old thoughts are coming in and they're stopping us from progressing. So I just want us to be sitting with it. Sometimes remembering what we don't want makes it easier for us to get where we want to get to. So second mistake we can't afford to make with our parenting is thinking, I really need them to listen. A thought like that, or I hope they'll listen this time. This creates the emotion of graspiness, this graspy energy, this desperate energy. And when we're feeling needy, we're crossing our fingers. I totally did this every day when my kids were little, crossing my fingers. I hope they're in a good mood today. I hope they're really cooperative today. When we're hoping they'll listen, I hope they pick up their toys better. I hope they'll turn off their games when I ask. I doubt it's going to happen. I doubt he's going to listen to me. It's going to turn into a tug of war. I'm so tired. Another thought is this isn't working. Maybe it will tonight, which for most of us brings up what emotions. I want you to think for a second, what emotions happens? Some of you are like, yes, this is me every night. What emotions happen for you when you're thinking, I hope it's better? We talk about the word hope, and in some cases, it's really helpful. Yes. Desperateness, helplessness, fear, frustration. Yes. The truth is, we don't have any control what our child does. And it's this crazy rule we have on planet Earth called free will, agency, freedom to choose. So we really can't take that away, even though as parents, we really wish we could. And I remember my oldest, when he turned 6 months, I don't know, whenever you started feeding them baby food, I can't remember when I did that with him. It's been a while, but I remember him refusing to eat peas. I was like, come on, buddy, these are so good for you. And he just would spit them out and push them off his tray. And he was showing me, and all my other kids did too, that we can't make them do what they don't want to do. And so this is really powerful to think about and to really sit, because I think we really resist this idea that, no, I can really get them to do what I want them to do. No, we want them to want to listen to us. How do we get to that stage? That's what we're talking about here. We're dropping the control. We're dropping the graspiness, because what we often do is we resort to bribing or incentivizing or begging or hoping or even wishing on a star that this time it will finally work. And when it doesn't, we resort to ultimatums, dangling a possible consequence if they don't listen, which sometimes works, but it has a clear expiration date. You'll have to either keep offering the reward or threatening the consequence, or things are just going to go right back to where they used to be. So this is the craziest part, is to really settle in and accept with peace that we don't have control over our child's every move. They're not our Marion puppet. We're not controlling them with strings, because that just makes things worse when we engage in a battle that we really can't win. I used to do this all the time. I'd set these ultimatums. And when my kids got a little bit older, they started to realize, Mom can't really force me to do that. And they just push. When I'm pushing, they push back. It's a law of nature. So we've got to drop the rope and then try something else. So instead of this, I want you to try to, and we're going to unpack this over the next 5 days. I want you to stop this needy, graspy, and trust yourself instead. Because when you show up grasping, you aren't trusting yourself or your child. So a few months ago, another story just to illustrate the point and to help you see the craziness of what it would look like to be graspy in a different situation. So a few months ago, my husband and I were on a trip, and we were walking in the city, and I heard Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody in the distance. And I started walking because I love live music. I love street performers. And I was pulling my husband along with me, and we rounded the corner, and there were hundreds of people clapping and dancing and singing. And it was 11 o'clock on a weekday night. I think it was a Wednesday. And he had managed to draw hundreds of people. He was such a good singer, such a good performer. He was singing Bohemian Rhapsody, which the crowd knew. And it was just so fun. So what does this have to do with parenting? This is the perfect example of the magnetic pull we want to create as parents. If this street performer had been, hey guys, please come listen to me. I promise this is going to be good. Come on, and begging and graspy, people would have been totally turned off and been like, that's weird. But instead, he had this ingredient. And here's the equation he was using. He had the right energy, the right belief about himself. His thoughts were about himself. I didn't ask him this, but I'm guessing. Is I'm really good at this. People want to listen to me. I have a fun song. I have a good lineup. It's a good location. And then he's saying really powerfully. So then his belief about himself is, this is awesome. I'm singing so well. People love this. And people just started coming. But I promise you, he started with no one there. Because as we were there that week, it was so fascinating to watch. We had this place we were staying at was high, and there were street performers happening all over the place. And I could look down and see as they would switch, how one street performer would have hundreds of people, and then he would be done with his show, and the next one would come and he'd start with nothing because everyone would leave. So the street performer had us all thinking, I want to be here. I want to listen to him. And I want you to think about, what if our kids were thinking that? I want to be here. I want to listen to mom. And that is what's created when we use connection, not correction. But we have to believe that's even possible first. And we have to realize what happens when we're feeling graspy, and we have to start catching it. How many parents have wanted nothing more than to get their kids to listen to them? And the key to getting the kids to want to listen to you is having the right energy, which goes back to having a powerful belief about what's going on for you and your kids. Remember how I said parenting starts in our brains with sentences in our mind. So we have to really go to the root. A lot of times, if we think about the analogy of a fruit tree and the kids aren't listening, and we're trying to use consequences and rewards and incentives and positive attitude, right? From a forced place, we're looking at the fruit and trying to figure out the problem with the fruit by trying to treat the fruit instead of going to the root and being, maybe it's because the roots aren't getting enough water or enough fertilizer, or we're not getting enough sun. What's happening? And connection is getting to the root, realizing that parenting starts with sentences in our brain, goes to the root. It changes the whole vibe and energy of parenting, but it's a little different than what we've traditionally talked about or looked at with parenting, because it's approaching it from really getting to the core issues instead of just treating the surface behavior. So we're getting to the root of it. What I like to say is that if you connect authentically first, then they'll want to listen to you. And I was thinking the other day, oh, people haven't heard that before, probably because I've made it up. But I say it all the time, and it's awesome. I know league members have heard me say it. It's based on this idea that we connect first, and then all the other things start falling into place. And yes, it's an onion, so we have to go through the layers of it a little bit. Not complicated, but we need to do it good to the root, like a gardener or a person who's tending an orchard would have to problem solve. And there might be a couple things they need to do. We have to do that with our parenting too, but we're looking at the problem instead of a novice might come through the garden or the orchard or whatever we're looking at and not understand how to ask the right questions to get to the root. So this idea that you connect authentically first and then they'll want to listen to you, it's based on a boatload of science, along with lots of personal experience with myself and all my people I've worked with. But because it hasn't gone viral, we haven't heard it all over society, it might be a new thought. Or it might be hard to believe. Really? Connection? What does that mean? It's not passive. It's more than just spending time with our kids, although that's very important. It's also about how do we deal with off-track behavior in a connective way. And once you get the hang of it, it's going to be amazing. You're going to love it. It's going to become second nature. But what we don't want to do, what we need to start noticing is how the graspiness or I hope they'll do better is really preventing us from getting to the place where we can connect authentically first. Because when we are grasping, when we're needy, when we're hoping and praying and wishing on a star that everything's better today, we are so caught up in that thought process that we're not asking the questions of what's happening? What do my children need? What do I need? What's getting in the way of our relationship? Why are they not listening to me? From a place of curiosity that really gets us the solutions and the questions answered in a way that gets us to where we want to go. And we're going to go more into that over the next 5 days. So hold on to your horses. That's going to be so fun as we unpack that even more. So first mistake is the shoulda, woulda, coulda, dropping that. That will alleviate so much shame, so much guilt. So it'll stop the nervous systems from getting triggered. Mistake number 2 is this graspy energy, this desperate energy. I hope they stop. I hope they listen, and really dropping into, okay, what is at the root of this? And how can I believe that I have what they need? Just like the street performer, I have what they need and people are going to want to listen to me. I have something powerful to share. I have their best interest in heart. I believe in them. I have compassion. Of course, my kids are going to want to listen to me. And number 3 is thinking that we can't do it. I can't figure this out. It's too late. I'm not patient enough. I'm not organized enough. And this creates the emotions of desperation. What you guys type into, what does that feel for you? When you feel like you can't reinvent your parenting, Yeah, it feels, yes, like a failure. You feel self-doubt. You guys are so good. Yes. When I was really getting the hang of this, I was really going through a reinvention of my parenting. What was really helpful for me was to remember all the other people, not in parenting specifically, but to realize Stan Lee, who's the Marvel guy, he didn't make his first break till he was 39, or Vera Wang, 40, the dress designer, or Henry Ford, 45, until he came up with the Model T. So it's never too late. And I just offer that to you to consider it. So what happens when we're thinking, I can't do this, is we lack self-confidence. And what we want to have is self-confidence, because when we're doubting ourselves and we're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know, this is too hard, I can't figure this out, we're in this cycle of self-doubt and fear and worry, and we stay in it because emotions feed emotions. It's self-propagating. We're feeding ourselves the same thing, and we're not sure why we're not feeling more confident, why we're not feeling more capable, and why we're not feeling more assertive as a parent. That's because we're feeding ourselves all of these lies that we don't know what we're doing, which is not true. So the definition of self-confidence says to be secure in yourself or your abilities. I like to define it as your ability to trust yourself. It's knowing you can experience any emotion, including failure, including humiliation, including rejection, without being harmed. And it's your overall opinion of yourself. So I'm going to break these down. One, your ability to trust yourself. And the ability to trust yourself comes from this consistent follow through on your word. I'm going to figure this out, or I'm going to go do this thing. I'm going to go have this conversation with this child. I'm going to go on a run, or I'm going to go on a walk, and keeping your word and doing that at your highest level. So the second part of self-confidence is knowing that you can experience any emotion. This is something we deep dive so much inside League because we are so fearful of emotions, and we jump to what they mean, and we have trouble sitting with them. And if we can get to this place where the worst thing that can ever happen is an emotion, truly emotions are what make life bad when it's bad. Most of us spend too much time in self-doubt because we don't know how to handle all the emotions that come our way when our kids say no, or when they yell at us, or they have the temper tantrum, or as they get bigger, when they start pushing back more. If we haven't started a more connective dialogue with them, we can really get triggered, and we can start reacting in our own nervous system reaction of fight or flight. So despite our fear of being permanently harmed, there is no emotion that we can't feel and process all the way through. And when we are willing to experience any emotion, and we know it's the worst that can happen to us, we are going to be flooded with self-confidence. So conceptually, I hope you're understanding this. The implementation of this is something that takes a little bit of time and practice. It's something we do a lot. And if you're inside League and you are wanting to deep dive on this, jump to either the calls that we've talked about emotions, or we can jump on a call and process some emotions. There's more resources on emotions. Dive into them. And I highly recommend that because this is so important. The ability to feel is our safety net for anything we want to do. It takes the risk out of everything and gives us this attitude of bring it on. So that's the second one, is this ability to feel every emotion and to understand what the emotions are telling us. And once again, we're getting to the root of it. And then the third part of what we want to replace this, I can't do this, I can't figure this out mindset and go into self-confidence, is our opinion of ourself. What you think of yourself is what generates or depletes self-confidence. So I want you to think about what you are thinking about yourself overall as a parent, and you can do it by certain situations. So if there's a situation that's glowing and you love the results, what are you thinking about yourself there? Probably, I got this, I love my kids, I'm capable, something really powerful. And think about a situation where it's not going the way you want to, where it's a tug of war, where it's a battle, where the house is messy and you're just feeling so overwhelmed. What are you thinking about yourself there? You want to see the contrast. It's so good because we're not just two-dimensional. We're not just black and white people, right? We have a myriad of things happening in our life, and we want to start to see things so we can use and draw upon those abilities we have in certain situations and start to apply them to other situations. So confidence is a feeling, and self-confidence is a feeling about yourself. All of our feelings are going to come from our thinking. So the way we think about ourselves determines whether or not we feel confident. A self-confident person is going to think they are good. They're going to think they're capable. They're going to think they're worthy. They're going to think they are strong and competent. Now, notice this doesn't have to be proven or true. Self-confidence is a feeling that creates a result, and that result doesn't have to be completely, perfectly, empirically proven in a court of law. So Your opinion of yourself matters. And really quickly, I just want to touch on how is this different than arrogance? So arrogance is thinking you are better than someone else and then trying to prove it. So arrogance actually comes from a place of a false self-confidence by trying to put others down. All right. So think about that. Give yourself permission to think you're capable, to think you're able to do this. That is going to change everything for you. So let me recap the 3 mistakes that we can't afford to make with our parenting. I want all of you guys to be thinking about this and catching yourself when this is coming up for you. So the first mistake I want all of us to be onto ourselves about is this should have, would have, could have, that we could have done something different. It's when the behavior has gone off track and we go in with this resistance, kind of judgmental attitude and think they shouldn't have done this. I want you to think about the chain of events that happens from that. Start to question that if you haven't before, that maybe that's not serving you. Maybe that's not actually getting you where you want to go. Look at the specifics of it. Second is this graspy energy of I need them to listen, or I hope they'll listen, and think about where that's coming up in your life, where things aren't going the way you want them to, and you're needing them to change so that you can feel better, hoping that it'll be better today, they'll listen better, or the house will be cleaner, they'll do their chores today, or they'll get up without a grouchy attitude, or do their homework without complaining. And that needs to happen for you to feel confident or happy, or to think they're being good kids. Where is that graspiness? And think about the street performer and how he gathered hundreds of people on a Wednesday night at 11 p.m. because he was thinking, I am capable of performing in a way that attracts people. What if as a parent, I am capable of showing up with my kids in a way that gets them to want to listen? Start there. We need to unpack it probably more, but start there and see what that habit does for you. And 3 is thinking that you can't do this. So going into this like self-doubt cycle, and just remember what that's creating for you, that you're never going to get out of that from that space. Okay. So the last part to wrap it up, so we can move into the Irresistible Parenting Protocol, which is today's topic. So we're ready to do this now that we've outlined the 3 mistakes that you can't afford to make with your parenting, made that blatantly clear so you can see it. We have to see the unconscious thinking so that we can pivot. We have to have the awareness. It is so important to know what you do not want so you can get really clear on what you do want. And something we don't typically get clear on, that we did get clear on today, are the beliefs or the emotions that are behind creating what we do not want. We just get focused into what we want without being, oh, that's what's creating it. It's if you took your car to the mechanic and they didn't do the diagnostic work to figure out the problem, I want it to run. They're like, okay. And they just start haphazardly trying to fix that without realizing what the thing is that's preventing it from running. We've got to do the diagnostic work. And that's what we started today with. So I want you to look at that, those 3 beliefs, those 3 categorical beliefs that are perhaps getting in your way, and maybe one more than the other, of getting where you want to be with your parenting. So we've spent most of our time today going over what I have found is happening with most parents at the root, what they're really struggling with, and that's preventing them from creating what they want with their parenting. Boil them down to 3 thoughts. You could have variations of these, but 3 thoughts that come something like this. The kids should have done something different, which creates resistance, frustration, creating a need to try to control. And then oftentimes there's lack of compassion or understanding that we get from that thought process. The second one is I hope the kids will listen to me, which is desperate, grasping, needy. Nobody wants to do something from that place. That's not a long-term solution. And I can't figure this out, which creates blame, guilt, shame, hopelessness, and helplessness. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. All of your actions are fueled by thoughts and beliefs. So I want you to think about what you'll be feeling and doing if you're carrying around those thoughts. And I want you to pop it in the Q&A. Let me see. And we've said some of this before, but just to sink it in deeper. Yes, frustrated, upset, discouraged, disappointed, angry, hopeless. Yes. And when you're feeling that way, what do? Yell at the kids, get grouchy, feel taken advantage of, feel resentful. Yes, take privileges away, timeouts. Somebody said cry in my room because I feel so bad. Just want the day to end, feel like a terrible mother. Yes. Yes, thanks for typing those in for me. Now, if we think of emotions as the fuel to our actions, it's the gas that fuels and moves our car forward. Emotions are fueling and moving our car. So negative emotions, just like if we put bad gas into the car, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't move it forward in the way we wanted to. If we put negative emotions in as our fuel and we're trying to think it's going to create a positive action, positive result, it's not going to work. A negative motion or thought creates a negative result. A positive motion and thought creates a positive result. When we realize this, we begin to see why it's so important that we discover these thought errors and limiting beliefs that are keeping us stuck in these negative thought loops and action loops that are keeping us creating these same negative results over and over again. So I call today's class the Irresistible Parenting Protocol. It starts with us answering these 3 questions that I'm going to leave with you today to work on. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about them more so you can dive deeper on them and create ultimately your irresistible parenting protocol. So write these down. They're very important. I want you to look at this. Today, we're doing the diagnostic work so that we can create the irresistible parenting protocol, which we're going to be doing over the next 5 days. So question number 1, where am I shoulding my kids? What impact is that having? What would change if it stopped? And what am I afraid would happen if I did stop doing it? So this one's all around the shoulding, the thing, the really resisting reality, fighting against what's happening. Should have been different, could have been different. I wish they would have done something different. So where is that happening? What impact is that happening? What impact is that having on my life, on my kids, on my family dynamics, right? What would change if I was able to stop doing that? And then what am I afraid would happen if I did stop doing that? And let me explain the last one, because you might be thinking, what are you talking about? There is always a reason. There's always a reason we're doing what we're doing. Even if it's negative, there's always a reason. Our brains, this makes sense. This is going to help us. So for me, I'll share my personal example is when I was letting go of some of these things. And for me, this felt like a release of control. I felt like I needed to hold on and control this. And it felt like I was letting go of that, which was silly because I didn't really have control over it. I just had this idea I had control over it. But when I went through this process of, I'm going to stop thinking things should be different and just accept things as they are, I realized that what I was afraid would happen is that I would lose complete control and it would be completely mayhem and disaster. So I want you to think about for you, what is that thing you're afraid would happen if you let go of shoulding or coulding or woulding or having those little conversations or thoughts in your brains of really thinking that things should have gone differently? Do you think you're going to lose control? Do you think your kids are just going to be doing whatever they want and things are going to get worse? I want you to explore your brain because it's really important we understand that part so that we can address it. Okay, number 2, and there's a couple of questions in each of these categories that are very similar. So the first one was all about the shoulding, the resisting reality. Number 2 is, where am I being graspy, needy, or desperate? So I really want you to ask yourself this. Where am I being graspy, needing, or desperate? I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I need them to do this for me. I've got to have them. I hope it works better today. And then I want you to think about, and you can write down 2, 3, 10, 20 things. I don't care. All of the situations. For me, it was chores. It was bedtime. It was getting their homework done. It was having them be polite. All of the things that were, if I stopped needing that, what would happen? What was the impact that was having on my life? For me, what was the impact that was having? It was really damaging my relationship with my kids. It was causing me to not sleep well at night, to feel so much worry and panic and anxiety. So what would change if I stopped it? And then what am I afraid would happen if I did stop doing it? So I want you to unpack it, this needy, graspy, desperate energy that we're having. The opposite of the street performer. The first one's being the kind, loving police officer. How can I just accept and be like, hey, you need to change this without the shoulding, coulding, woulding? The set question number 2 is, how can I be inviting and magnetic and get my kids to want to listen to me? Where is that not happening? Where am I doing the opposite of that? What's the impact that's having? What would change if I stopped it? And what am I afraid would happen if I did stop it? And then 3 is, where or when am I feeling like I can't do this or I don't know how to do this? Where is that popping up? You might have a couple of scenarios that it keeps coming up, maybe because things are not getting better. It's like bedtime. Oh my gosh, I can't do this. It's never going to stop. Or sibling fighting. A lot of times this comes up when the kids are just fighting and fighting. And we have this little thought in our head, I don't know what to do. This is terrible. I can't figure this out. I'm failing. So what are the scenarios where that self-doubt really comes up strong? And then what impact is it having? What would change if it stopped? And what is it that you're afraid would happen if you did stop doing it? So your brain, like I've said, is filled with sentences. All of these sentences were taught to you directly or indirectly. Some of them so ingrained that you don't even notice them as sentences. You just think them as truths. And these are the thoughts that go unquestioned. So the first step has to be awareness. That's what we've been talking all about today. You must become aware of what you believe. You must become aware of what you're thinking. You must become aware of what you're feeling. But just like a fish in water, sometimes it's difficult to recognize the water. And it takes the skill of being the watcher, which was the focus of today. You have to watch your brain, and you have to watch your brain think. You have to do it very carefully. You will look out on the world and you will think that you're just observing the world factually. But really, we are constantly making judgments about the world based on what we have learned or believed in the past. So you might think it's a beautiful day, and you won't even think anything about that sentence. You will think you are simply viewing the world objectively. But when we do this, we also think a thought like he's rude or she's so unkind is also just the facts, the news, because they're such deeply ingrained beliefs. You don't even realize they're beliefs. So each thought needs to be evaluated. And you need to say, do I want to change this or not? This is especially true when you're changing thoughts about yourself. Like, I'm just this kind of person. I can't do this. I'm not good at this. I'm always having a hard time with this. These thoughts go right under the radar, right under your awareness if you don't pay attention to them. So I've given you your homework for today, really bumping up the awareness of what's going on inside of your brain so that by the end of the week, you will have created your Irresistible Parenting Protocol. We're going to do that every day. For League members, my challenge to you is to go post your answers to these questions so that I can see them and we can respond to them. We can iterate on them. So thank you, League members, for coming today. I loved seeing you here. It was so good. Thank you to all the visitors who came in, had a little taste of what we do inside of League. It's just one of the type of things we do in here that you get a sneak peek. I'm so glad to have you. We'll talk again. Can't wait to hear the answers to your questions so that we can continue to jam on that. It's going to be amazing. So I'll see you all soon. Oh, thank you. That was so sweet. All those comments in the Q&A. I so appreciate it. It was so fun to see all of you guys here today. Bye, guys.
Thanks so much for listening, you all. If you are ready to learn more about Connect Method Parenting, if you've been listening to the podcast and you think, ooh, I'd love to be able to implement this in my life and with my parenting more, then check out Pivot. It's my 8-week program where we deep dive into learning and implementing Connect Method Parenting so that you can take this information and transform your parenting journey. Head over to connectmethodparenting.com to find out when the next group starts.